Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today I'm chatting with Alex Lawrence. She is the Director of Marketing at Southblock. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm super excited to jump into your career journey and talk about everything you've done from media to product marketing to now overseeing all of marketing at Southblock. But before we jump into all of that fun stuff, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, for sure. So I am Alex Lawrence. I am born and raised in the DC area, and I have been working professionally for I think almost 14 years. I come from a really big Italian family, so I'm the youngest of four girls. I have a lot of really strong women that have mentored me in my family and set amazing examples. And started my career working in startups, very much fast-paced, customer focused. And I did move into media, like you said, but I've spent the majority of my career now, just over 8 years, working in food marketing, which ties really well into my passions, which are food. And then I also was a musician earlier in my life too, and pursued that. So I have kind of the music and the food are my passions, and I get to do the food part as my day job, which I feel very lucky to do that.
That is amazing. So, I actually really quickly I want to read like the first sentence of your LinkedIn about me. I never do this, but you have one of the best written LinkedIn
Oh my
about me's I've ever seen. If anyone's listening, definitely go check out Alex's LinkedIn because it's so creative. But the first sentence on her LinkedIn, to set the scene, I have a degree in finance and I'm a singer-songwriter, which means I have an affinity for getting lost in spreadsheets to analyze marketing campaigns while also being able to create compelling content with my storytelling abilities. I also want to ask you, do you have any advice for writing powerful LinkedIn about me sections? I'm not going to keep reading the rest of yours, but it's so great
gosh.
because that immediately catches my attention and immediately makes you stand out among what most people write there.
Oh my gosh, great question. Honestly, be true to who you are. I think, especially with LinkedIn over the years, it's gotten a little more, people are letting their hair down a little more on LinkedIn. Years ago, it felt like you had to be so buttoned up, but like just think about what's going to make people remember you and leave that impact. And whether it's through creative writing, or being true to yourself, like I think those things are really important. I also think you learn those things, you get more confident with age. You get a little more bold, and maybe you don't feel so confident putting that there if you're 23, but I say do it. You want people to get a glimpse of who you are. We're human after all, right? We're knowledge workers. We are professional, but we also have a life outside of work, and we are whole people. So I really wanted that. I really wanted to convey that in my LinkedIn profile.
Well, you did it beautifully. I think yours is such a great example. So, you do have this interesting background. I think, especially finance and music were things that you would think would be on opposite ends of the spectrum. And then you ended up here within marketing. So, can you tell me, kind of rewind the clock just a little bit and tell me about early in your career since um, like how did you start to figure out that marketing was where you wanted to go into, especially since now you have such broad experience within public relations, communications, product marketing. So what initially drew you to marketing and how did your background shape that approach?
Yeah. So I majored in finance. I did not major in marketing. And I honestly, I didn't really, I think I chose that major. It was very practical. I graduated a couple years after the recession of 2008. So I felt like that was a safe bet. And I was also pursuing music in college too. So I'm very pragmatic, but I'm also creative. So I never fully jumped into either one, right? And I think that was probably something just something I look back on, right? I just didn't have the means to be able to go like chase music. And I didn't really like want to move to a new city and struggle and do that. I wanted to like stand on my own 2 feet, and jump into the professional world. So the music and that creativity was something that was not probably going to be stoked working in a finance environment, or selling financial instruments. Like that just didn't excite me. So I started in customer service my career and then moved into media. And then I was a little, let's say, not feeling so challenged at my day job. So I started a side hustle and started my food blog called Keys to the Cucina. And that was a fusion of music and food, and also really sort of poked at my desire for learning. So I built my website. I was everything, editor and photographer, recipe developer. And that side hustle opened me up to get into a food marketing role full time. So
But can you describe that for me? Because I always give the advice now of like, if you want to work in social media, start posting on TikTok. If you want to work in marketing, you can start on your own. So, how did this experience of you creating content on your own allow you to land that first role in food marketing?
Yeah, great question. There's a few factors. So first of all, don't ever be afraid to do something on the side or get something that you're really passionate about, do it after work, especially before you settle down and have kids. Like you have so much time, right? The 5 to 9, 9 to 5, and then your 5 to 9, you can really pour into something that really excites you. So first of all, don't ever be afraid to do that because you never know who's watching.
Mhm.
So I had old colleagues from Living Social, my first job who had started this new meal delivery startup in DC. So my old colleague Nick reached out and shared with me about the new role, the marketing director role there, and then I got the job. So I think a few factors were that very first job, I was firing on all cylinders. I was working really hard. I was maintaining, building and maintaining relationships. And you just never know who's going to come knocking. And I think having that reputation and leaving, a good impression on people, and then they see what you're doing on the side. It all kind of came together to give me my first job in food marketing.
That is amazing. And yeah, you never know what the thing is going to be. I always love the phrase of creating your own luck, of
Yeah,
just creating as many opportunities for yourself by just doing lots of things. Like you said, it's not one thing, it was a combination of multiple things you were doing that allowed for this opportunity to happen.
yeah, absolutely.
So, with food marketing, can you describe a little bit about what the industry is like? Because you've had a lot of different roles, and I think your longest one was at Sweet Green, and there's just multiple other ones that you've done as well. So, what is the food marketing industry like?
Oh man, I think people who are in the food industry, people who love food, are just really cool people and easygoing, and they have a real passion for hospitality, treating people how they want to be treated. I think, there's a lot of conversation. For example, Starbucks, they have a new CEO, they're overhauling some processes, bringing in new technology, simplifying things. And I think we add all these layers in food, but at the end of the day, it's about delivering an awesome experience to the customers in your store and that come see you, right? So I think that's what I love about it is making those connections. And I think food is the ultimate connector. It's one of the biggest reasons why I started my food blog to share, recipes from my Italian grandmother, share the memories associated with food. So I think that's what's really special about working in the food industry.
I love that. And then, so this early part of your career, you mentioned earlier that you started working at a startup. And I know one of the things you mentioned that you're passionate about is the power of experimenting different roles and industries in your 20s. So, what were you kind of focusing on, if anything, early on in your career when you were in your 20s and you were trying to try different things? Like, what was kind of your compass? We'll use, yeah, your North Compass in your career.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing that was always just going through my mind is how can I get my foot in the door? How can I get in these businesses, in these rooms, in these fast growing, exciting brands? So that was pretty much my main focus is to, how can I get in and how can I then learn and make an impact? So I think those are a couple really important things to keep in mind. And I also think, years ago, college, you had to go to college and it was a very like predictable, next steps. And I think I felt a little bit of like, why don't I know what I want to go and do after school? I'm supposed to be like popped out at the end of this rainbow, right? 4-year degree. And I think we've peeled that back a little bit, right? With Gen Z is getting, trade schools are becoming more prevalent and things are, not as reliant on college. But I do feel like there was this expectation that I would have sort of this path laid out for me, which looking back now sounds ridiculous. You make your own path, you make your own luck, right? But that is something that had me a little off kilter, I would say, after graduating school. And I think in your early 20s, your whole life revolves around school, elementary and middle and high school and da da da. And it's very predictable. And then 22 hits and you're like, whoa, there's a big world out there. And I think also in your 20s, you have the time and the runway to make mistakes slash learning forward, failing forward, and learning what you're good at and learning who you are, because that also plays a big role into, what you do for your day job.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's so much pressure that a lot of us put on ourselves when we are in our 20s to like that every single decision we put so much weight behind it, especially early on in our career. And like while those decisions are important, I think kind of what you mentioned, if you are just prioritizing learning as much as you possibly can, then that's going to take you the farthest in your career because, titles change, jobs change, but your experience is yours to keep.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so we're talking about you within food marketing, but also within an industry, there's also different types of marketing roles. And you spent a decent chunk of your career within the media side. So can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like within food marketing?
Yeah, so taking my experience from Wedding Wire, I worked on the national sales team and I was an account manager. So what that looked like was I had a handful of accounts. Crate and Barrel was one of mine, and they obviously had they still have a big wedding registry business. So they wanted to get in front of the men and women who were on Wedding Wire planning their wedding, so that they could, do their Crate and Barrel registry, register for products at that store. So I worked a lot with agencies. And then directly with, David's Bridal, Crate and Barrel, Best Buy back in the day was a client too. So that was really great because I put media plans together and I executed on them. Now I'm leading an agency who's helping South Block with paid media right now. So now I'm on the other side of knowing,
Mm.
what they're doing and tweaking their plans because I know maybe like we need to lean in more into, brand ads versus like customer acquisition. So it's really nice to be able to have the both sides of the coin experience.
And when it comes to media, what are some, so immediately I think of storytelling. I know there's paid media, there's different types of media, but when I think of like earned media, I think of storytelling as a huge aspect. And I think just a really big thread among marketers who are successful in their careers that they're really good storytellers. So are there any maybe strategies you can share around creating a compelling narrative that gets media coverage?
Yeah, I think leaning into emotional benefits of whatever product that you're selling and putting whoever you're targeting in in that role of like using the product. So it's very different to say, this salad has 20 grams of protein. Then you go and say this salad is going to help you fuel your day. And as a busy mom, you're going to crush drop off your work day and have an amazing night with your family. Like touching on people's emotions, that's all we really want and respond to, right? Like TikTok is hitting on like comedy, right? We want to laugh, we want an escape. And I think sometimes you can get lost in like the functional benefits of what you're selling, but positioning what you're selling and putting people in it and imagining themselves, oh, this occasion is where I'm going to get South Block is when, I'm having my book club with my girlfriends and we're going to order acai bowls and we're going to bond and we're going to read about, talk about the book and just setting the scene, setting the stage. It's very much, it's reminiscent of when I would do live gigs and I would be playing for a noisy bar. I would always start with a cover song because then people will warm up to you, right? You
Mm.
start with an original, they're like, who the heck is this, woman singing in the corner? So I use that analogy a lot in when I'm writing and when I'm storytelling.
Also, do you still perform?
I don't that often. I did a porch party in DC last spring with some other neighbors who are musicians. I have all my instruments in my house. I play with my kids. I was just playing guitar with my daughter last night. So the best thing about the music is that it's always going to stay with me, even if I'm not touring the world as, a musician. I think it never goes away. And it's something that I really was tied to my who I was for the majority of my early life. So always want to keep it around for sure.
Yeah. What instruments do you play?
I play piano and guitar.
Oh my God.
I
And
am
then you,
self-taught on both though, which ladders into my learning, like my tenacity for wanting to be a learner and learn new things.
that is incredible. And then you said, do you write your own songs?
Yes.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
I did.
Wow.
I had an album in 2006 when I graduated high school. And then when I graduated college, I did another album. So music and songwriting. My dad is really musical. My mom is really food centered, and my dad is musical. So I always say I got,
Oh my
one of
gosh.
those things from each of them.
That's amazing. And it's cool to see that those are both things that are still active and prevalent in your life. Because I feel like sometimes as we get older, we can let all of the busyness kind of be an excuse not to keep pursuing things that aren't directly tied to our career. So it's cool that that's still a part of your life.
For sure.
All right. So at this point, so I'm kind of skipping around a little bit because Alex has done quite a lot. But at this point of Wedding Wire, so you kind of ended there as the senior account manager of national media operations, which is quite a huge role, and you had a lot of growth in that role. And then after this role, you went over to Galley and then over to Sweet Green. So in this point in your career, because you are moving quite quickly and you are kind of having a fast upward growth trajectory, what are some things that you think that you did that allowed you to have so much growth in your career?
That is an awesome question. I think the little things are the big things. So doing what you say you're gonna do and like following up and doing it is really important in business. Leading with kindness. And then from a more tactical perspective, giving a no update is what I like to tell folks that I manage. So just, maybe I know that that project is there, you know what you got to go and do. Just check in and let me know, hey, this is still on my radar, no changes yet. So I think a lot of those things help, and also just actively listening and learning from the men and women above me as well, learning how they operated in meetings, how they conducted themselves. I think I focused on really being a sponge in my 20s, whether it was absorbing new industries and new roles, being open to taking on more. I think 6 months into my job at Wedding Wire, they asked me to be an account manager from being a media planner. And, it was always met with, of course, like, let's do it, right? There's nothing, no need to be nervous and think you have to know, what every step has to be. So I think having an open mind also played a big role in my growth in my 20s.
And I know one of the things you had mentioned to me is that you started to get good at figuring out what your strengths were and then aligning those to your career goals. What did you figure out that your strengths were? And then also for somebody, because I think sometimes when you're newer in your career, it's really hard to figure out what your strengths are. So do you have any advice for someone else trying to figure out what their superpower is?
Yeah. I think pay attention to the activities that you're doing and you lose track of time. When you're in flow state, when you're in a groove, I think that's really important. And it's kind of like, a voice in your head of like, hey, like this is something here. So for me, when I'm, analyzing a marketing campaign, pulling reporting numbers, backing into performance, comparing it to a campaign before, I can get lost doing that. I don't even look at the clock and all of a sudden an hour goes by. So I do get a lot of energy when I'm analyzing marketing campaigns. So I think that's something that helped me figure out, okay, marketing can still stoke my desire, my passion for like creativity and storytelling, but I can also get in the weeds with numbers, which is something from an early age. I know that I was pretty good at. So I think pay attention to when you're in flow state and what that activity is my best advice.
I love that. I actually, in our marketing accelerator on the first week, one of the things I teach is that instead of, or to kind of reframe the word passion with what energizes you. And
Yes.
so exactly what you're saying is like the flow state is like what energizes you, what are the things that you can get lost in, what are the things that you work on that give you more energy, the things that, yeah, you like look at the clock and an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours has flown by and you didn't even notice. And chasing that more so than trying to like figure out what you're passionate about is, I think is a lot easier to identify.
Yes. You are so on it. I love that.
It's so fun now, and I think about that too in my own career, in my own life. But sometimes it's also things that you may not think like, oh my gosh, is this a viable career path for me? I think when I was early on in my career, I was like, I loved creative stuff, but I was like, oh my gosh, can I really make money doing
Yeah.
creative stuff? Like, is that really possible? But I think it absolutely is. And I think being true to that, like being honest with the stuff that really energizes you, and that makes your work more fun too, because then you're not drained at the end of the day, but you're excited to wake up and go to work the next day.
Yes. Can I add one more thing on
Yes.
how to find your superpowers is I think, there's a lot of like personality, assessments that you can take. But one of the biggest ones that I've taken, most important ones is the Clifton Strengths test. So it gives you your top 5 natural strengths, and then you pay a little extra and get like your 35. And I took it 4 or 5 years ago, and some things changed. And I think it's important to just pay attention to, where you score and what those top things are, because sometimes they'll be really clear and sometimes you'll be like, oh, wait, maybe I am like really good at this thing. So I think that's a really great way to peek behind the curtain and just step out of yourself, outside of yourself a little bit and be like, okay, so if I'm really strong at building relationships and like winning others over and I'm very organized, like what types of roles would help me, hit on those strengths on a daily basis.
That's a really good one too. And then also too, I think sometimes asking other people like, what do you think my greatest
Yes.
strength is also a great way to get some insight.
Yes, peer feedback. I love it.
Yes. All right. So can you talk to me a little bit about your transition from media over to by the time you ended at Sweet Green, you were a product marketing manager. So I know a lot happened in between those two things, but can you kind of tell me how you started to shift in that direction with your career?
Yeah. Well, Sweetgreen actually acquired Galley Foods, so that's how I came into the fold of Sweetgreen.
Okay.
So, very lucky that that happened. It was a very exciting day when the news broke. But I would say Galley is like when I really got my feet wet in marketing. I was in the weeds, like running field marketing events almost every night after work, to email campaigns and digital ads and all of that. So I really got to touch every piece of marketing. And then I feel like my 4.5 years at Sweetgreen was really when I brought my marketing skills, just elevated them and got to be a little more higher level strategy versus the doing and the doing every day. So I think I could not have executed well at Sweetgreen without having the galley experience of working for another startup, touching every part of the business and really truly feeling my impact. I don't think I would have succeeded as well at Sweetgreen if I hadn't have had that experience. But Sweetgreen really did allow me to kind of see the forest and not the trees in terms of creating strategies. So one of the bigger ones that I worked on was we launched the first like drive through. It was really like an app pickup lane outside of Chicago. So it was a brand new store format. So wanting to position that as, it's in a suburban market. It's not in your like typical Sweetgreen, urban trade area. So how are we going to bring this to them, right? Like what's going to really resonate with the people living in this neighborhood and how they're going to consume Sweetgreen in this different way.
That is so. What is kind of the process or some of the steps that go? Obviously, I know there's so much that go into launching something like that, but what are some of the questions or things that like us as an everyday consumer that may go to the drive-through may not think that you had to like decisions you had to think through or things you had to think through to bring something like that to life?
Yeah, I think well, we leaned a lot on research and customer insight. So we knew the trade area we were going into was very much suburban. So what that means is, parents with minivans and kids in the car. So what better convenience can we offer than a drive-through with the healthiest thing you can get in a drive-through, right? I positioned it as like this is so antithetical to drive-throughs in America. You're getting a fresh, unprocessed salad handed to you through your car door. So convenience was huge when you're speaking to, suburban audience that's mainly families. And also customization. You can get something for the whole family when you come through the Sweetgreen drive through. And then also getting more granular, we had like, digital menu screens in the drive through, the same, signage you might see in a McDonald's. But what are we going to say on that? How are we going to position what we're doing here, especially if you're new and coming there for the first time. So we had to corral like imagery of families. We didn't really have a lot of that. So we had to kind of like hack something together there. So, really much like high level strategy to also tactically like what's going on the menu board. So everything was, something that I had to think through along with the rest of the team. But I really enjoyed that process.
Are there more Sweet Green drive-throughs now, or was that the only one?
I believe that's the only one. I know that drive-through real estate is pretty hard to get because a lot of people want them, banks, coffee shops. So I don't know if they've locked in more, but I wish that they had one here. Honestly, taking
Me
two kids
too.
out of their car seats is like a pain in the butt. Or even if you don't have kids, it's just like so nice if you just want an efficient day, right? Like,
Yes, if you just like want to drive home and not have to get out of the car. I know
yeah,
Sweet Green makes it really easy with like in-app ordering and stuff like
yeah.
that, but I live in Austin and it's a food truck culture, not a drive-through culture, but I come from Southern California where there's drive-throughs for everything. Like your mom and pop will have a drive-through. Like it's just so much more common versus in Austin. It's not, I mean, your big fast food chains have drive-through, but there's even not that many here. But I would love a Sweet Green drive-through on the way home.
Right. We got to put in a good word.
I know, I know. So can you also tell me just a little bit more about product marketing within the food industry and kind of what your role encompassed as a product marketing manager for Sweet Green?
Yeah, it's very unlikely. The product marketing function was created by ex-Uber folks who came to Sweetgreen because it's a very common, growing function in tech companies. I don't know if they still have the function. Honestly, they did some reorg a year and a half ago. But when I was doing it, we basically separated it by channel. So like Alexa, my old colleague worked on third party like delivery, right? So the Uber Eats and the DoorDashes and that business for Sweetgreen, that was her channel. And then I was sort of like new store formats and growth channels. So working on the first drive through and then also the first robotic kitchen concept as
Oh,
well.
wow.
So that was kind of my lane in terms of product marketing. So owning everything from, high level insights and working on, the product and building it out there to then launching it, right? Go to market and then pushing on product adoption and usage, right? So the drive-through, making sure the percentage of the drive-through orders and that channel order are hitting the goals that we want. So that's kind of how it shows up, or it showed up for me in food marketing specifically.
And for somebody that wants to work within a product marketing role like this, are there any skills that they should work on building now?
Yeah, I think influence is a huge one. When you're in product marketing, you're interfacing everybody from legal to retail marketing to store construction signage. Like you are touching every piece of the business. So being able to articulate, what the marketing strategy is and the why behind what you're doing is really important to drive, people getting excited and to get people to be on board and be a part of the project.
I love that. I think that's a great one. Okay, so after Sweet Green, I know you were at a couple roles in between. Do you do consulting work on the side as well?
Yes. So there was a reorg September of 2023. So about 10% of the marketing team was let go. So I think it's important to highlight that because you don't really have control when that happens. You do your best work and then sometimes things just change. And honestly, I was open to the change, but wasn't sure what I was going to do next. It wasn't something I was expecting. So I did consult. And then, my old boss from Galley hit me up when he heard of the layoffs and he offered me a consulting opportunity for Ice Cream Jubilee, which is a small sort of boutique ice cream company here in the DC area. So that was wonderful just to keep, my head in the game and get more experience. I built their like new store marketing playbook when I consulted for them. And then I worked for Cabinet Health, which is an awesome consumer brand started by somebody I went to high school with. So we can reconnected on LinkedIn when he saw I was looking for work. So I think those two examples are an incredible way to just show like you never know who's watching and who's following you and who can, support you in a time when you need to get some work. So I think always leaving a good impression and a good, really striving to make sure that your reputation is strong and people respect you and what you do is so important.
I also am happy you shared that that's how your role at Sweet Green ended. And it's because it's so I don't know if it's surprising or not surprising, but a lot of guests that I've had on that are incredibly successful, that work at amazing companies at one point in their life went through a layoff.
Yeah.
And I know from friends when this happened during the pandemic, it is just the most crushing thing ever sometimes because it can feel personal. And I know, especially for you, I know you were at Sweet Green for 4 years, but you also were at Galley for 3 years. So you were within that company or org for a really
Yeah.
long time. And so, and I love when basically my point is here. I love when guests share that because it is, I think, more of a normal thing than we think it might be. We might think it's something that's like really rare but it actually happens to more people than you might think.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also, so I know you mentioned you got these two opportunities after when this you did leave Sweet Green. Did you post on LinkedIn or did you do anything to kind of get seen by others who were then able to help you with new opportunities?
Yeah, I posted, I think about a week later. I think I took a week to just reorient myself and take a moment, take a beat. So yeah, I did post about a week after, and then I hit the ground running with networking. There is nothing more powerful than hitting people up that you used to work with, neighbors, friends. I mean, I probably had about 70 coffee chats between
70?
yeah, in
No
person and
way.
virtual. And it was also I would speak to anybody. It was a great time to reconnect with old colleagues and talk about old times. And it wasn't mostly like how they can help me. It was really just like reestablishing the network and the connection with various people, because you just never know who is you'll be top of mind and then somebody gives you a call. So I think that's also something for young women in their careers is always take the call, shoot your shot. If you find somebody, intriguing on LinkedIn and you want to get to know them. I didn't have anybody say no when I reached out to them. So out
Oh
of,
my gosh.
a lot of outreach, that was a good percentage, right? Everybody was like, of course, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, meet in person, come to my office, meet my colleagues. I did everything that you can think of, because I do have a family. I have a husband and two kids. And as much as I wanted to like go lay on a beach, I couldn't. So I think that's also really important to be just really face your circumstances and what you have. I
Yeah.
mean, I have an incredible support system here, family and friends. But it really is, it's all up to you. You have to take ownership of what those next steps are, even though it's hard and you got to just like be in the suck and just push through. But I think you'll be happy, that you did. I mean, there were some days that were pretty hard. You feel like you're running into a lot of walls and progress is not being made, but it's all a part of the journey.
You are a powerhouse. That is incredible. I also think it's so great to hear because going back to the flip side of when you where you are early in your career and you're also feeling that like rut of like maybe like you're hitting a wall, nothing's working. But to hear that someone that you have, I mean, at this point in your career, did you have like 15 years plus of experience and still
Yeah.
having to like it wasn't just like the next opportunity showed up on your doorstep and you got to take it, right? You still had to work for it. And I hope that people hearing are like, you need to have you should have that mentality at all stages of your
Yeah.
career. And I love the coffee chat angle because I think it's something that not that it's easy, but it's something that anybody can do. Like I think it's like one of the more accessible options of like you can ask people for coffee chats. So can you tell me what was your approach to asking people? Like what would you say in your messages to them and how would you reach out to them?
I really I focused on just having, a warm, kind tone. And maybe I would bring up, maybe I've met them through somebody and then obviously like explain the connection and like why I'm so interested in learning from them or where I'm trying to take my career and how I think a coffee chat would really help me and then help them too. I ended a lot of my notes with like my network is your network. If you ever need anything, let me know. And I think there's a lot of, there's just a lot of back and forth. It's a two-way street. So anytime somebody comes to me and they need help or they need a referral, I'm there in a heartbeat because, they hooked me up at a time when I needed to have, some conversation. So I think just making sure you lead with kindness. And if it's people that you don't know, I think it goes a long way for you to, reach out to them, tell them who you are. And then a little line about like, I really am interested in your experience at this place, or I have a specific question about this role. I think being really specific helps so it doesn't feel like spraying and praying and, oh, somebody just sent me this canned note to meet up because, people the days are busy, right? So if people take the moment to like get to know you, I mean, our LinkedIn has like everything you would possibly need to know, right? There's plenty of information to pull from there.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to personalize it and keep the tone warm and friendly.
So if someone is reaching out to you and let's say they want to do a coffee chat with you, do you prefer that that initial message like is in a direct ask or do you think it's fine to like say something specific and then do the ask like, "Oh, can I have a 15-minute chat with you?"
I think it's okay to do the ask in
Mhm.
that first message because the further you get in your career, the busier, the more things you're managing. So if
Yeah.
it can be efficiently communicated in one touch, I think that's best. I wouldn't judge if somebody did that at all.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. And then, so let's say you do the ask, you send the connection. You again, I like the advice of even just pulling one specific thing that lets them know it's like, this is not a mass template I'm sending to everybody. I looked at your profile and I wrote this connection message. So let's say you do get they say yes, you get the coffee chat. What are some questions that you like to ask on the coffee chats?
Yeah. So you're saying from me to the person who asked for the coffee
Oh,
chat?
just like in general, like if you're somebody that's reaching out to someone else for a coffee chat and you get it, like what should you ask this person in front of you?
Yeah. Well, I think you need to determine like what was the reason you wanted to have the coffee chat with this person. Get clear on what you're trying to learn. So,
So
set the
let's say
stage.
let's say that they're in a similar situation as you, like they're on the job hunt right now and they're looking for opportunities.
Yeah. So I be very clear that, hey, like I'm on the job hunt, reorg, affected me, and here's where I'm at. These are the three things I'm really looking for in terms of like job title. And then these are like the three traits that I have that I think would make me a great fit. Like, let's talk about it.
Okay. So so you're coming in and being quite direct with what you're looking for and then starting the conversation that way.
Yeah, I think, the first note is like a little warmer of like, hey, like I'd love to do this. And then, I think obviously there's a couple minutes where you can kind of go back and forth and get to know people and then
Mhm.
open up the floor for questions. But I don't think it needs to be this long, drawn out thing. And I think that like thinking through your questions thoroughly ahead of time so that it's clear on what you want out of the condo is really important. People have a lot of stuff going on. So if you are, they're carving out 30 minutes in the day, I think it's important just to use every minute as efficiently and effectively as you can.
Okay, so I actually just talked to somebody yesterday, a girl, and she was like, I've been doing the coffee chats, and on the coffee chat they'll mention that there are opportunities open, but then I never hear back from them after the coffee chat. So are there any advice? Let's say you're telling this person looking for these things, and like, okay, like I think, my company or this company might have some opportunity. How are you following up, or how are you kind of making sure that they don't forget about you later on and that they actually do make that connection for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all on the person requesting the coffee chat. Of course, if very quickly there's an opening and it's fresh in your mind, you'll be like, oh, I talked to John and he needs this, right? Or he'd be a great fit or she'd be a great fit. So I think it's really on you, like going back to our earlier notion of you make your own luck. Something I think that's really great is setting a media alert for the company that you're looking at. And then if they have a press release or a new product launch, you can take that and say, hey, like Sally, I just read that like you did X, Y, and Z. This is awesome. Wanted to circle back and see if there's any openings on your team or if you guys are growing and hiring soon. I think that's a great way to show that like you put an effort in and you're tailoring it to that company that you're going after.
Yeah, that is a good tip too. Okay, and then sorry, I'm digging in so much here just because I know that this is such an area of opportunity that I wish more people took, and that I just know everyone is so like scared. I think it's scary because it's unknown of like how do I ask if I get this call with this person? What do I even ask them? Like how do I take advantage of this opportunity? So you said you did around 70. What was the biggest thing you learned from doing so many?
The biggest thing I learned is that people truly want to help, but you have to be the steward of like your story and tell them how they can help you. And I think that also takes time. Like I think the earlier combos I wasn't as clear because I was still there was some whiplash with losing my role and trying to figure out, am I staying in this industry? Am I exploring other ones? In the DC area, we have so many, like government contractor cybersecurity type companies, all things that I've never had experience in. So unfortunately, that's like the lay of the land here. There's not a lot of consumer brands, and so much of my experience was in that. So anyway, I had sort of this internal struggle with where can I find another great opportunity for a consumer brand in DC. But I do think that having a moment just to get clear on what you need and then, essentially spoon feeding it to that person who's going to help you network is really important. That way they know what to go after, or they know what friend works in that industry or for that company. Even when I consulted with Ice Cream Jubilee, one of the managers there is very well connected in the DC area. So she introduced me to two or three people. And then all of a sudden it just grows, right? And it ripples out. So I think you got to get clear though on what you want and what you need out of the next role as well.
I love that. And then what if you are on the coffee chat and you're letting them know like I'm looking for these types of jobs in these industries and they're like, "Okay, like I'll keep that in mind, but nothing comes to mind right now of any opportunities." Then
Yeah.
how are you pivoting the conversation to still make sure that it's a valuable one for you?
I mean, I think you could also probe and say, well, do you know of anybody who has connections in this industry, right? You could dig a little bit more there. And then also maybe that coffee chat connection maybe it ends there, right? Maybe they're not the people that are going to get you to the path that you want. Um, that's also sort of the, disclaimer if you are taking any coffee chat with anybody, like just make sure like they are, connected a little bit to like where you want to be going, right? Just so it's the best use of time. But again, I really, I'm a like relator at heart. I love building relationships. So for me, I'm not going to be as picky. I want to talk to whoever I can talk to because you never know. And most of my jobs I've gotten through knowing people. I think this current one I got, the founder reached out to me on LinkedIn. That's the first time that's ever happened. So the whatever 4 or 5 jobs before this was all through knowing people. So it really is important to take those calls.
Yeah. I do love that as the little thread that's kind of connecting all of these ideas we're talking about today, because you do never know where any connection could ever lead. And I think about that now a lot too in my life. If I always try to say yes to as many things as I possibly can, and maybe I go to a lunch and it's a little awkward, or maybe I do something and I'm like, okay, I'm not sure like how I felt about that, but then in the most random ways people will like circle back and come back in your life. And when you are putting yourself out there and doing all those coffee chats, I think if someone's listening to this episode, a great action item is to try to schedule like one coffee chat a week, two coffee chats a week, like try to do as many things as possible because you truly never know. And it may not have been that a direct person from a coffee chat reached out to you, but it can be of like someone who heard of you through someone else, or you just never know. And yeah, you can create more opportunities for yourself by putting yourself out there more.
100%.
Okay, so that brings us to your current role out at South Block. Can you share a little bit what South Block is for people who don't know, and then a little kind of overview of what you do there?
Yeah. So South Block is a brand started in the DC area around 2011. And we are a smoothie bowl and acai bowl shop. So it's a very mission-driven company. We want to make people feel awesome through our products, very community-driven. And the brand has a lot of love here in the DC area. So I'm very excited to be a part of the team and I am the director of marketing. So we are in hyper growth mode. We have opened 4 new restaurants in the past 8 months.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
we have our 20th opening sometime this spring. So really, I'm building the systems and the technology and the foundation to help fuel that growth and open new stores and open in new communities.
I love acai bowls, and there are not enough in Austin, so you guys got to come to Austin.
Yes, we'll have to scope the market. I love it.
I grew up in Huntington Beach in California. Went
Okay,
to school in San Diego,
nice.
and I just loved Aussie bowls. Like I was having one weekly, and every single time I go home, it's the first thing I do with my family is like we're gonna go get an acai bowl because something about they do have there are some places do serve them, but they're just not nothing hits the spot.
Yeah, no, I feel you. People have a lot of like memories of their first time having acai, and I believe we're one of the first acai shops on the East Coast that started. It's
Really?
obviously more of like a West Coast thing, but people are absolutely just love the product and how it makes them feel, and just the vibe. We're all about like good vibes and making you feel awesome, and kind of being like a bright light spot in your day. The DMV is a lot of hustling going on, a lot of hardworking people, but South Block is kind of that respite for coming in, bring your kid after soccer, meet up with your friend after work for a bowl, and you feel good, about what you're putting in your body, which is something that I'm really passionate about too. So, from Sweet Green to this, I feel really good about marketing this type of product because it's
Yeah.
something I truly believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, having worked in the food industry for so many years, what are some of the trends that you're seeing, or kind of where do you think the industry is going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh man. Well the trends are definitely there's a lot of when it comes to like social, there's a lot of humor
Mhm.
that food brands are doing, right? Like that's their
Yes.
whole MO is like really letting their hair down on TikTok and even Instagram. So I think, the brand, it's really important for food brands to have that presence, right? So that people get to know who you are and what you're all about. So I definitely think social, I mean, has always been important, but making sure that you're using that channel to your advantage is really important. I also think like menu innovation and customization is something that people really crave. So making sure that you are bringing seasonal items to the plate, right? And you're making sure people know that you're thinking about these flavors that might be getting popular and that you're infusing them in your own way in your product. I think people really want to see that. I know Gen Z specifically is like very like product focused and they want to like Snapchat their friends of the new product they got at the shop down the street. Like it's very, we want to make sure our stuff is shareable and craveable at the same time. We want to get people in and trying it.
It's interesting seeing now with, I know especially now with TikTok of how brands are trying to stand out. And I do think in the food industry, seeing humor too. We're seeing sometimes like your local acai shop doing some silly trend on social media, and it's cool to see brands blow up that way, which I think is a fun one. For anybody right now that really wants to work in food marketing or would love to work in social media and food marketing or just anywhere in food marketing, is there any advice you would want to give them or anything that you think they can do to stand out in a job application?
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with a mentee a couple of weeks ago because they're very passionate about social. And my advice is there's restaurants everywhere, there's food everywhere in your town, wherever you are. Write a note to one of them, offer to do, some on the side social media work to help them grow their presence. Be specific. Tell them, hey, like I want to take over your Instagram account for a few months and like let's see where it takes you, right? I noticed some opportunities, some low-hanging fruit. And then if you I encourage you to do that maybe while you have your day job, right? If you have some space at night or on the weekends, there's plenty of time to do that. So I would start maybe like a side hustle. And that way, when you are maybe reaching out or applying for a full-time role, you have this portfolio that you've already built and you can show that like you're pursuing it while you're also working full-time, meaning that you're pretty passionate about it and you'd probably be a great team member. And you want to help learn, you want to learn and continue to grow. So those would be like signals to me that I'm like, okay, totally give this person a shot.
Yeah. And you're already probably eating out, right? So just
Yeah.
it's not like it's any extra work. It's just like
Right.
photograph and film when you go out to eat with your friends.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, Alex. I've loved all the themes we've talked on today. Is there any last piece of advice you'd like to share with marketing girlies?
Oh my gosh, that's a big one. I think just pulling out my piece of advice from earlier is just leading with kindness. I think that's the antidote to everything that might be plaguing your career or some issues with your team. I think just always make sure you remember you're working with humans, you're selling to humans. People want to feel something. And if you can be kind and be a bright spot in their day, that's a wonderful place to be.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for coming on Marketing Girly. I have enjoyed my time with you tremendously, and this has been such a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. You're amazing, and I appreciate all of the questions and the time.